Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys checking today's video out and spending some time with me. Now we're going to be talking about how the Bassmaster Classic is not what it used to be. We're going to be talking about how the prestige of the event has been diminished, about how it's really no longer truly the World Series of bass fishing like it used to be. I hate to see this, guys, because I've been a huge fan of the Classic forever, and what's happened to it the last 5 or 10 years is very disturbing to me. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and then maybe offer some solutions to this problem here. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, a quick reminder, I'd just like to invite everybody to please swing by the description in my video and check out my Blaukat's Corner page on Tackle Warehouse. I've got my own page on Tackle Warehouse, and what they do every month is I list the top lures for that particular month, and I have a correlating video, that shows how to fish each lure. So I'll put my Blaukat's Corner link in the description of this video if you guys want to check that out. Some good information to help you guys out on a month-by-month basis there. Okay, now guys, one of the things about this, I've been around a long time where I've seen the evolution of the Classic, and I've qualified myself for 9 Bassmaster Classics. So I've been a competitor in 9 events, been there, done that. I know what the Classic is about. I've seen it where it's been at the top of its, prestige compared to what it is right now. And make no mistake about it, guys, the Bassmaster Classic is a shadow of its former self, what it used to be in terms of its impact on the industry. Now, I'm not saying that they still don't make a show out of it, and there's always going to be people that come to the Bassmaster Classic, but what I'm saying is when you equate the prestige of the Bassmaster Classic in 2025 to back when it was really at the top of its it was at the top of its glory in the 80s and 90s, in my opinion, the 80s and early 90s, and then it sort of went downhill after that. That's really what I want to talk about in today's video. Let me give you a little insight here, guys. First of all, for years, like during the 70s and up until the early 80s, Bassmaster was the only pro circuit there wasn't any other pro circuit. So you fished 6 Bassmaster events. They took the top 24 anglers to the Bassmaster Classic, and that was the World Championship. And then when I started in 1986, it was the same deal. We had 6 tournaments. That was the Bassmaster Tournament Trail. They took the top 35 anglers out of those 6 tournaments, and they were the Classic qualifiers. And if you qualified for the Classic back then, when I qualified for a lot of my Classics in the 90s, 2000s, like that, it was a big deal. It's like you could parlay that Classic qualification into some pretty lucrative sponsorships, because Bassmaster was the standard bearer that if you fished the Bassmaster Tour and you qualified for the Classic, you were legitimately looked at as a professional angler, and the industry responded accordingly. So most of the people that were regular Bassmaster Classic qualifiers, had a pretty decent stable of sponsors on top of that. And up until about, probably the early 2000s or something like that, when you qualified for the Bassmaster Classic, it was a big deal. It's like you got this invitation in the mail from Bassmaster. They flew you out there, all expenses paid. They put you up in a super nice hotel. Like I said, paid for your plane fare and everything. They provided boats for everybody. Ranger and Triton, they both provided boats for many years to the Classic. So you'd fly into the Classic. Most people flew in or drove in. You'd have your own personalized boat with your name and your number on it. And then, like, every night of the Bassmaster Classic, like in practice and the tournament and all this type of stuff, there'd be these big lavish banquets where you'd have like tuxedo events. We had, star entertainers that would come and sing and perform there. It was a big deal, man. They did it right. I mean, it was super, super cool. You had your own driver. Like in the morning, you'd have your own personal driver that drove your boat to the lake. They launched the boat for you. And on the way back, you had a police escort. I remember I was fishing a Bassmaster Classic out of Logan Martin one year, and we had a police escort for 35 miles on the interstate highway. Policemen and, motorcycles and cruisers, they were blocking the highway like a presidential motorcade or something. It was a big freaking deal. Guys, those days are gone. And on top of that, once you won the Classic, this was the most important thing. When you won the Bassmaster Classic back then, you were the king of the bass fishing world for the next year. I mean, you could write your own check. I mean, a lot of people parlayed it into, 7-figure deals over the course of the year. I mean, everything in the bass fishing universe centered around the Bassmaster Classic champion. Guys, it's not like that anymore. It's not whatsoever. I don't even remember who's won any of the Classics hardly over the past 10 years. And here's what's happened, the problem that we've seen with this. It's pretty widespread. Number one, like I said, the event of FLW. When FLW came along in 1996, in retrospect, even though FLW did some good things for the sport as far as bringing a lot of non-endemic sponsors into it, looking back in the big picture, this is probably the worst thing that ever happened for bass fishing, because it segmented and it split the professional bass fishing community. I was part of it too, guys. I fished both organizations. You had sponsorship obligations that kept people from fishing one or the other. It really splintered the sport in a negative way, and it diminished the impact of the Bassmaster Classic. When FLW really started firing on all 8 cylinders with the FLW Tour, this was back in the early 2000s, that is when the Classic started losing its prestige. And what happened with that is all of the stuff that was normally great about the Classic slowly started going away. Like I said, when you qualified, it didn't have the impact anymore. It's like the sponsors didn't come knocking at your door. They didn't provide boats anymore. You had to bring your own boat. They quit having the banquets. You didn't have these, lavish banquets like that we used to have. It's like the pageantry of the Bassmaster Classic started to diminish tremendously with the advent of the FLW Tour. And then more and more tournaments came along. You had all these big championships. You had the Forest Wood Cup now giving away more money than winning the Bassmaster Classic. And as a result, the Classic started to diminish in stature. And it has every single year since then. And in essence, there's simply too many tournaments. The influx of new tournaments and new championships around the country have watered down the prestige and the impact of the Bassmaster Classic. Now, you put on top of that what has happened. One of the biggest things about the Classic that got a lot of fan interest in it was the fact that they had people they followed. They had superstars in the sport. Like when you went to the Bassmaster Classic, you rooted for Roland Martin, you rooted for Hank Parker, you rooted for Rick Clunn. Everybody had a fan base. And you don't have that anymore, because with the advent of the cheater box, it has brought in an influx of unknown anglers. And when you have unknown anglers in a championship event, guys, you do not have the enthusiasm. Those anglers out there do not have the fan base as guys like a Hank Parker or a Rick Clunn did. And you don't know that unless you've been there. Unless you guys are sitting at the Richmond Coliseum in 1990 when Rick Clunn rolled in there and won this 4th Bassmaster Classic, you have no clue on the energetical deterioration of the Bassmaster Classic from like 1990 to 2024. It's night and day. So when you have this new constant influx of people that don't know, nobody knows who they are. I use the term 20-year-old flat brimmers are taking over the sport, including the Bassmaster Classic, is you diminish that star power, that star base, with the exception of just a minute minority of people that follow those people closely, that know who they are, that the general public doesn't. So from that standpoint, that's one of the real problems we find ourselves in. Now, here's one thing that you can equate it to, why the Classic has been diminished as far as the star power and the sponsorship surrounding it. Let's look at the LPGA, the Women's Professional Golf Association. What has happened this sort of the same thing has happened with the LPGA that's happened with Bassmaster, in the terms that in Korea, guys, one of the biggest sport for little girls in Korea is golf. So all the little girls play golf in Korea, and as a result, they became very, very good, and they started participating in the LPGA tournaments decades ago, and now the Korean women golfers completely dominate the LPGA. And as a result, that particular organization has lost a lot of fan base and sponsorships, because a lot of people, they don't know who these Korean golfers are, and they don't have the they don't have the energy and the passion to want to follow them, because they don't know who these people are. And it's not like they don't have, you know, superstars in the sport that they knew, like Nancy Lopez and stuff in the past. So you have this influx of a bunch of new people all the time that are unknown, and as a result, the interest in the sport went down. And that's the same thing that's happened with the Bassmaster Classic, and is happening right now, is when you have an influx of these unknown anglers, on top of the fact that there's, you know, the MFL Red Crest, there's the Toyota Series Championship, there's the All-American, you got just, you know, championships right and left out there. It's just not the same. It absolutely is not the same. So what do you do about it, man? What can you do to regain the prestige of the Bassmaster Classic? And guys, there's no easy answer to it. Until Bassmaster becomes the only true professional organization in the country that is the true measure of who is a professional angler and who is not, number one, that's never going to happen until that happens. And number two is that the cheater box, the pure nature of the cheater box takes away any chance for one particular angler to truly dominate the sport like we've always had in the past. You know, like I said, in the 80s, we had Denny Breyer and Rick Clunn dominate. In the early 90s, we had Larry Nixon and David Fritz and Mark Davis. You know, and it goes on and on and on. But now, with the cheater box out there, you can't have that level of domination, because you have so many young anglers that is the only game that they have. And then they just trade back and forth who happens to, you know, turn that transducer just at the right angle to find a school of fish out there that they can throw and catch with their cheater box. So they don't have the ability to constantly sustain top level finishes all the time. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen occasionally. There's some anglers out there that have been able to do it on the short term, but I don't think that that's sustainable over the long term. So until the cheater box is removed from tournament fishing, you're never going to establish those superstars like you had in the past. It's simply the very nature of that technique lends to inconsistency, and the very evolving part of that technology leads to more inconsistency, and the fact that more people are doing it, and there's no separation. You don't have any specialists. You don't have, you know, in the past you've had, you know, a dozen anglers out there that were specialists on certain lure genres and techniques, and you just simply don't have that anymore. So the problem is sort of widespread, and the problem has been created by the tournament organizations themselves. Here is the thing that would have been different, guys. Now, imagine the world like this. Imagine a world where FLW never did anything except, you know, the BFLs. That was their deal, the weekend angler deal, which was the best part of FLW forever. Imagine a world where Bassmaster was the only pro circuit. There was no NPFL, there was no MLF Bass Pro Tour, there was no competing circuits. Bassmaster Tournament Trail was the deal. And then imagine a world on top of that where you did not have the cheater box. You had traditional two-dimensional sonar or flashers. The prestige of the Bassmaster Classic would have remained intact completely. There would have been no change in it. It'd have been the same thing as the Super Bowl or the World Series, but we have watered it down so much just by those things that I mentioned before, it's never going to get back to that point again. So I don't know, guys. It's like, I hate to see it, because, man, I was around when the Classic was the deal. I mean, it was like every angler out there would give their left nut to qualify for the Bassmaster Classic. And I'm sure there's still some people out there that do it now, but they simply can't understand or equate what I'm talking about unless they were, you know, there in the past. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about it. You know, it's one of those things where you see this all the time when competition increases to a certain point. Sometimes competition can be good, sometimes it's not good, and it's not good in this particular situation with the prestige and the impact that the Bassmaster Classic has, because it simply does not have the impact or the prestige or the notoriety that it used to before. And again, that's a direct result from the decisions that the tournament, organizations have made to do what they're going to do. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. We'll talk later.